Black Eagle, the giant rat invasion. Hit that subscribe button if you dare, because once you enter Black Eagle prison, there's no walking back out. The storm hit the prison first. Screams, boots, and metal doors slammed through the night as officers rushed down the dim corridor of Block C. Flashlights jittered over concrete walls slick with humidity. No one knew it yet, but the discovery made at dawn would become one of the most disturbing cases in the institution's history. The body lay inside the old kitchen storage room, a part of the prison abandoned since the early 2000s during the notorious food shortages. The door had rusted into its hinges. Dust layered the shelves. But fresh drag marks cut across the floor, leading to the single spotlight officers had dragged into the room. There, slumped against the collapsed sacks of flour, was inmate Pavel Orlov, gaunt, bruised, and terrified even in death. Detective Miriam Hensley crouched beside him. 39 years old, sharp-eyed, with a reputation for solving the cases that made other investigators turn away. She brushed her glove across the man's shoulder. His shirt was torn in strange patches, like fabric bitten through. But the bruises were older, days old. Someone had kept him here, alive and terrified. "Cause of death?" asked Warden Stenger, his voice tight. "Too early. But look around." Hensley tilted her flashlight deeper into the darkness. Movement. Silent. Something darted behind a stack of dented metal trays. The guard closest to her flinched. "Not again," he muttered. Hensley turned. "What do you mean, not again?" He swallowed. "This room, it's where the rats started coming from." Black Eagle prison had always been brutal, but during the shortages 2 decades earlier, it became something else. A place where food was so scarce prisoners joked the rats ate better than they did. Stories from that era lingered like ghosts, rodents big as cats, bold enough to leap onto tables, ripping bread straight from inmates' hands. Guards ignored complaints. Some claimed the infestation was too massive to control. Others said they simply didn't care. But nothing explained why an inmate had been dragged into this room and left to die. Hensley stood and examined the door. The latch had been forced open recently. Splintered metal. Fresh scratches. Someone wanted access to this forgotten place. As the medical team removed the body, Hensley paced the room. Pavel Orlov, serving 7 years for robbery. No enemies. No debts. But there was fear in the way he had died, and fear never appeared without a reason. She stopped beside a stack of crates. Something glimmered underneath. She pulled it free, a small recorder, nearly crushed. She pressed play. Static. Then, something else. Scuffling. Breathing. A scraping sound so sharp it made her shoulders tense. Then Orlov's voice, trembling, whispering into the device. "They're using the rats. They're using them to punish us. Please, tell my family I didn't do anything." The recording cut off. Hensley snapped her eyes toward the warden. "What is this?" Stenger stiffened. Probably some inmate rumor. Then why was he hiding in here with a recorder? Why is he dead? Before he could answer, a scream echoed from the hallway outside, one of the guards who had stayed behind to search. Hensley sprinted out, nearly slipping on the wet floor. The guard stood frozen, flashlight trembling in his hand, pointing toward a vent grate. The metal was bent outward, freshly, and stuck to the edge of it was a shred of prison uniform, and something worse. A massive bite mark. Hensley knelt, heart pounding. Not an animal bite, not the kind she expected. Something too deliberate, too controlled, too guided. She looked back at the warden. What exactly has been happening in this prison? Warden Stenger didn't answer, because at that moment, another scream tore through the block. This one deeper, panicked, and unmistakably human. The second body had just been found. The second body was found near the laundry tunnels, a place prisoners avoided even in daylight. The corridor was narrow, lit only by a flickering bulb that buzzed like an angry hornet. The smell of bleach mixed with something metallic. Something wrong. Inmate Victor Dalka lay sprawled across the tiles, eyes wide open, frozen in the kind of terror that didn't come from a simple attack. His throat wasn't torn out. His limbs weren't mangled. Instead, his ankles and wrists showed deep rope burns, and his fingertips were scraped raw. He had fought. Not for his life, but for escape. Detective Hensley crouched over him, jaw tightening. 2 bodies in the span of an hour. Same fear. Same desperation. Same signs of being restrained. But it was the floor beneath him that made her pulse jump. Tiny footprints. Dozens of them. A scatter of dust and grime disturbed in chaotic circles. At first glance, they were unmistakably rodent tracks, but larger, deeper, and far too organized. Almost like they'd moved in formation. Behind her, Officer Petros muttered, "This place is cursed. Everyone knows what happened in the shortages. The rats, they took over half the prison. And now they're killing inmates?" Hensley asked sharply. "No. Someone's using them." His voice shook. Just like Orloff said. Warden Stenger cut him off. "That's enough. We're not resurrecting myths." Hensley stood up, eyes narrowing. "Then explain these tracks." Stenger's silence was an answer in itself. Hensley turned to the guards. "I want surveillance from every hall connected to the kitchen and these tunnels. If there's someone orchestrating this, we'll see it." They scattered to obey, grateful for something to do other than stare at the body. Hensley walked deeper into the laundry tunnel. The walls sweated moisture. Pipes rattled overhead. Every sound echoed like something alive. Her flashlight swept across a series of crates shoved against a wall, and something caught her eye. Claw marks. Not random. Patterned. Repeated. She leaned closer. This wasn't made by animals. Someone trained them. Conditioned them. A soft shuffle behind her made her spin. It was Officer Petros, pale, shaking. "I need to show you something," he whispered. He led her to a locked maintenance door. "This room has been sealed since 2004. After the shortages ended, they closed it permanently." "Why?" Hensley asked. "Because this is where the infestations were worst. And where experiments were rumored to happen." He unlocked the door with trembling hands. The darkness inside swallowed the hallway light. Hensley stepped forward, flashlight cutting across old cages stacked to the ceiling, rusted shut. Some small, some large. All reinforced with bars too heavy-duty for normal vermin control. Her beam moved across the floor. More tracks. More claw marks. And old feeding trays that had been recently moved. Then she saw the files. A metal cabinet pried open. Paperwork scattered. She picked up the first document. Behavioral Conditioning Unit, Phase 4. Subject, our series. The next sheet stopped her breath. Handler Identification Logs. Each page listed dates, meal cycles, training notes, and assignments to specific guards. The last entry was only a month old. She turned to Petros. "Someone revived this program." He nodded, swallowing hard. "And they're using the rats again." Hensley scanned the room one more time, until her flashlight hit something glinting in the far corner. A tiny camera, still blinking red. Recording. Watching. Someone knew she had discovered all of this. A sudden crash echoed from the hallway. Footsteps pounded. Shouts followed. Hensley ran out, weapon drawn, Petros behind her. One of the guards sprinted toward them, panic twisting his face. "Detective! Surveillance feed just came in, you need to see this." They rushed to the control room. On the main monitor, a grainy feed from a corridor near the basement flickered into view. A figure in a guard uniform was guiding a swarm of massive rats down the hall, tossing food pellets, directing them like trained attack dogs. But it wasn't the rats that froze Hensley in place. It was the man. His badge number. His height. His face. Someone she had already spoken to. Someone who had been beside her since she arrived. The feed zoomed in. Warden Stenger. Detective Miriam Hensley stared at the grainy footage, her breath trapped somewhere between disbelief and fury. On the surveillance screen, Warden Stenger moved with deliberate confidence, scattering pellets as a tide of oversized rats followed him in perfect formation. Their shadows rippled along the walls like a living stain, each animal responding to his hand gestures as if he were a conductor leading a violent symphony. Petros swallowed hard. He was part of the original program, wasn't he? Hensley didn't answer. She didn't need to. The conditioning files, the revived training logs, The cages, everything pointed to one truth. The infestation had not been a problem. It had been a weapon. She snapped into motion. Get every available guard to the lower levels. No one confronts him alone. But the moment they stepped into the hallway, alarms blared through the prison. The lights flickered, then cut out completely. Red emergency strobes flashed to life, painting the block in violent pulses. Stenger had triggered a lockdown. Tunnels first. Hensley shouted. They ran toward the basement levels, boots hammering against steel and concrete. Somewhere in the distance, inmates screamed, a rising chorus of panic. Hensley gripped her flashlight tighter as she descended the final staircase into the sublevel corridor. The scratching started before they reached the bottom. Dozens of tiny claws. Dozens of bodies moving fast. Petros froze. They're coming. Hensley yanked him back just as a swarm poured from the vents. Furred bodies, gleaming eyes, teeth clicking in rapid signals that almost sounded like code. They didn't attack. They didn't scatter. They created a wall, blocking the path ahead. Then came the footsteps. Slow, heavy, intentional. Warden Stenger emerged from the shadows, his uniform unbuttoned at the collar, sweat glistening across his forehead. He didn't look surprised to see them. You shouldn't have come down here, detective. Hensley stepped forward, refusing to show fear. You used inmates as experiments. You revived a program the government buried for a reason. Stenger's jaw tightened. Black Eagle was dying. Budget slashed. Morale destroyed. Orders slipping every year. I did what I had to. Discipline is survival. And rats, he gestured to the swarm. Rats are loyal when you give them purpose. Pavel Orlov and Viktor Dalko weren't discipline cases. You tortured them. He laughed. They were thieves in a prison of thieves. But they broke into my storage. They tried to expose everything. They forced my hand. Hensley lifted her weapon. It ends tonight. Stenger smiled, a slow, chilling expression. No, detective. It ends when they decide. He flicked a small clicker from his pocket and pressed it. The swarm surged forward. Hensley fired a warning shot into the floor, the blast echoing off the walls. The rats froze instantly, startled. She and Petros seized the moment, sprinting sideways into a narrow maintenance corridor. Through here, she yelled. The tunnel was tight, barely wide enough for one person. They ran until they hit a sealed hatch. Petros fumbled with the manual wheel, hands shaking. Hurry! Hensley shouted. Behind them, claws scraped louder. The swarm regrouped. Finally, the wheel spun. They threw open the hatch and slipped into an old generator room, slamming it behind them. Petros leaned against the wall, gasping. How do we stop him? How do you fight rats? Hensley scanned the room, flashlight darting over wires, switches, ancient power boxes, and then she saw it. A control panel marked vent system override. Not the rats, she said. We don't fight them. We cut off his control. She activated the override. Instantly, fans across the block roared to life, reversing air pressure and blasting through the vents. The sound was deafening. Rats screeched in confusion, their formation breaking apart. Stenger's clicker wouldn't save him now. They burst out of the generator room and back into the main tunnel. The swarm was scattered, disoriented, and Stenger, standing alone, confused, vulnerable. Hensley raised her weapon. It's over. You're done using everyone in this prison as your experiment. Stenger reached for his clicker, but the reversed airflow tore it from his hand and sent it skidding across the floor. He lunged for it. Hensley stepped forward. Don't. For the first time, Stenger hesitated. His army was gone. His power stripped away. He sank to his knees, defeated. Guards swarmed in seconds later, securing him. As Stenger was dragged away, he looked back at Hensley, eyes burning. You think shutting down the vents will stop them? We trained colonies, detective. Multiple colonies. Someone else will finish what I started. Hensley didn't flinch. Not on my watch. Weeks later, after the official shutdown of the conditioning program and a full federal investigation, Black Eagle Prison slowly returned to order. The rats vanished as quickly as they had come, scattering into the wilderness, leaving only claw marks and rumors behind. But 3 months after the case closed, Hensley received an unmarked envelope at her office. No return address. Inside was a single photograph. A subway tunnel. Shredded fabric. And a fresh, unmistakable claw pattern across the wall, large, deliberate, organized. A message. A warning. They were back. And they were no longer confined to Black Eagle. If you thought this story was intense, you're not ready for what comes next. Make sure you follow so you don't miss it.